Hello, everybody. I've got this question for you this morning. Is God in control? Is God in control? Now, that's what we want to speak about this morning. And to set the tone for that, I want to talk to you about a game that you can download onto your phone or onto your tablets called Pocket God. And in this game, you get to play God. And you're in control of all these islanders, these primitive islanders. And because you are God, you can make the sun come close to the island and burn them all up, or you can withdraw the sun and they freeze to death. You can flick them off the island and they get eaten by sharks. Or you can shake the island and they experience an earthquake. You are in control. And really this game highlights the question, is God in control? And does he really care? Because those are the two scenarios, One, God is powerful, but he doesn't care. Or God is not powerful and he is not in control. And that's what we want to speak about today. I know in the midst of this pandemic, some people are asking, is God really in control? Perhaps even in your prayer life, you just don't have as much confidence that you used to. You look at this pandemic, you look at the race problems that they're having in the US right now, you're looking at the farmers murders, you're looking at the gender-based violence that we're experiencing in the country. And you're asking, is God really in control? Some of you have personal stories that you could tell about your job, about your finances, about the relationships. And you're wondering, is God really in control? And for many, you believe that God is in control. But for now, it just seems like he doesn't have his hands on the dial of life. To help us understand this idea of God, about God being in control, I want to take you to the book of Job. Job chapter 1 is a very interesting chapter. Job is living an idyllic life. PCV, pre-coronavirus life. Everything is good. His children are good. His business is booming and life is great. And then he gets a message from one of his servants to say, Job, I've got bad news for you. Your animals are dying. They're dying like flies. In fact, it looks like they're all going to die. And Job is devastated. His business has just gone under and there's no corona payout from the government. There's no insurance. Job thinks, it cannot get any worse than this. Hey, Job, I've got news for you. It gets worse than this, because the next day, another servant comes to him and says to him, Job, I've got terrible news for you. Your children were meeting at your eldest son's house. There was a storm. The roof collapsed, and they are all dead. They were all crushed in the storm. Now, let me ask you this. What do you think Job did? What do you think he said? Well, let me read it for you. Job chapter 1. Verses 20 and verse 21 from the New Living Translation. Job stood up, tore his robe in grief. Then he shaved his head and he fell to the ground to worship. He said, I came naked from my mother's womb, and I will be naked when I leave. The Lord gave me what I had, and the Lord has taken it away. Praise the name of the Lord. So in this time of extreme grief, where he literally has lost everything, Job worships. He puts his faith and trust in God. But unfortunately, things still do not get any better for Job. There are people around him who keep pulling him down. They say to him, Job, it's your fault. You've obviously ticked God off, and now God is annoyed with you, and that's why he's done this to you. It's all your fault. And then his wife says to him, clearly, you need to just turn your back on God, curse God, and die. And that will end it all. So Job, from that time onwards, he keeps his faith, but he starts to ask questions. And one of the questions he asks is this. Does God really care? Is God really in control? God, do you see what's happening? Why don't you intervene and take control? I want to show you a picture taken by the Voyager spacecraft of Earth on February the 14th, 1990. This picture was taken from the edge of our galaxy, 6 billion kilometers away. The Earth looks like a little speck of dust in this ray of light. And when you see this, It's easy to think that we have got a God who was created, but you know what? He's out there, somewhere else, and he doesn't care what happens to us. He doesn't care about Corona. He doesn't care whether you can pay your bond or whether your children are well. He doesn't care about what's happening to your life on this little blue dot. I think the last couple of months has forced us to acknowledge a few things. We are more fragile and we are more vulnerable than we could ever have imagined. And certainly we are not in control of this world. And so Job asked God some questions, and I think he represents all of us in this. God, are you in control, and do you care? Do you really care about cancer and unemployment and our financial demise and about rejection? And then in chapter 38 of the book of Job, God's had enough of the questions from Job, and he answers Job. But he answers him in a way that we would not expect. He answers Job's questions with questions. And these questions have a way of putting life in perspective. Read Job chapter 38 and verse 2 with me, New King James Version. Who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? In other words, who is this that pretends to know what they don't know? And who is this that thinks they understand, but they cannot possibly understand? And then God says to Job in verse 3 of chapter 38, brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you will answer me. And then he says a number of things to Job, and he asks him a bunch of questions. Here it starts like this. Job, were you there when I formed the foundations of the earth? And Job, did you determine how much water the oceans would hold? And Job, did you decide what time the sun would rise and set? And did you decide on the vastness of the earth, or how the snowflakes would fall to the ground? Job, would you be the one who decided how light would travel or determine the course of water? And folks, what becomes abundantly clear to Job and to us as well, God knows what we don't. And when we look at the universe and the intricacies of it, there is no doubt that God is not someone who is indifferent, apathetic, and out of control. Rather, our universe indicates that God is very much in control. Church, what we are saying is this. It's unimaginable that this complex world came into existence without the hands of the Creator. And it's unimaginable that it continues to exist as it does without our Creator having His hands on the dial. I want you to have a look at this toy with me. This is one of my grandchildren's toys. It's a fantastic little thing. I think I like to play with it more than they do. And can you imagine for a second that this toy came into existence by chance? You look at this toy, this very simple little toy, infinitely less complex than our universe. And you have to believe someone built this. Someone created this. You have to be extremely doof to think that this just, man, somehow plastic just came together and the batteries and how would this come into existence without someone creating it? So why would anybody believe that our complex world, with all its dials and knobbies and gauges and finite and infinite systems, would come into existence without the hand of an infinite Creator? By the way, this is called the teleological argument. Design demands a designer. And there is a God who is in control, and He has His hands on the control, even in our broken world. And we are confident to say, like Paul said in Romans chapter 8 and verse 28, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. So as we're walking in the control room of heaven, we notice a dial that says location dial. Did you know that if the earth was 5% closer to the sun, the temperature on earth would be 500 degrees centigrade? And if the earth was 5% further from the sun, it would be a frozen planet. Did you know that the sun is over 1,000,000 times bigger than the earth? In fact, you could put 1.3 million earths inside the sun. And if the sun was slightly smaller, the earth would have to be closer because we need the warmth. But if it came closer, the gravitational pull would lock the earth in such a way that the one side of the earth would be burnt up and the other side would be frozen. Aren't you glad there's a creator? He knows better than us, and that he is in control. As we examine the control room, we see a dial that's called the gravity dial. Did you know that if the gravity of Earth was slightly off, the moon would be closer to the Earth than it is, and we would experience tidal waves twice a day that would wipe out the entire population of the world? Aren't you glad God is in control? Consider for a second the dial called crust of the earth. You know, if the crust of the earth was thinner or thicker than it is, the consequences would be devastating for the earth. The earth's magnetic fields would be thrown totally off. It would either be so weak that radiation would wipe us out, or it would be so strong that the planet would be devastated by electromagnetic storms. What about the dial called atmosphere? Of course, the atmosphere is this protective blanket that covers the earth and is made up of oxygen and nitrogen and carbon dioxide. And the mixture of those gases is so critical. If they're just a little bit off, on the one side we could have this massive greenhouse effect totally out of kilter, or on the other side we could have this cosmic radiation that would just totally bomb the earth and wipe us all out. Consider for a second a dial called rotation, the rotation of the earth. Did you know that the earth rotates around its own axis 1,600 kilometers an hour? And it orbits around the sun 112,000 kilometers an hour. There are times when it is slightly closer to the sun, and at those times it spins a little quicker. And there are times that it's a little bit further from the sun and it slows down on its axis. And this is what causes the seasons on this earth. Don't you get the impression there is a God who is in control? Now, folks, there are all sorts of dials, myriads of dials like this, just keeping the earth finely tuned. It's just incredible. Now, the possibilities of even one of those dials being right by chance, maybe 10 million to 1. But hey, let's just say, every now and then somebody wins the lottery, 10 million to 1. But what if that person won the lottery 2 days in a row, and then 3 days in a row, 4 days in a row? What if that same person won the lottery 365 days in a row? You would know that is not by chance. Someone is cooking the books. Let me tell you what, when you look at this intricate universe of ours, you know someone is up there, cooked the books. Someone, our incredible Father, He created this universe and He sustains it. Our God is in control. The father of rocket science, Wernher von Braun, said this: "As I became exposed to the law of the universe, I was literally humbled by its unerring perfection. I became convinced that there must have been defined intent behind it all." He went on to say, "My experience with science led me to God, but must we really light a candle to see the sun?" In other words, come on, people. Do you have to light a candle to see the sun? Doesn't the universe just scream out, there's a creator and He is in control? I think von Braun was just saying what we read in Psalm 19 verses 1 to 4. The psalmist says this: The heavens proclaim the glory of God. The sky displays his craftsmanship. Day after day, they continue to speak. Night after night, they make him known. In other words, this created world of ours screams with a deafening sound. There's a creator, and he is in control. Just go out tonight. Cast your eyes to the heavens. God is shouting at you, I'm in control. At the end of the book of Job, Job chapter 42, the end of the story, Job had gone through all the trials of life, and he had listened to God question him, and then Job prays to God. And verse 5 of chapter 42, Job says, my ears have heard of you, but now I have seen you. In other words, he went from hearing about God to seeing God. He went from knowing about God to knowing God. And this changed his relationship with God. Stephen Canasta, famous scientist, points to a picture in 1992 that was taken by the Hubble spaceship. And it answers the question, what is at the center of our galaxy? You know, scientists have often speculated that at the center of our galaxy is a black hole. Now, a black hole is like a region in space where the gravitational pull is so great that nothing can escape from it. Even light itself cannot escape from the gravitational suck, the pull of this black hole. And 1992, Hubble took this picture from 31 million light years away. And this is what it looks like. Do you see what I see? Stephen Canasta says what we're looking at here is two dust rings circling a nucleus. It looks very much like a cross to me. You know, when Jesus was hanging on the cross, people thought God had lost control. How wrong they were. And of course, Jesus would rise from the dead and the world would never be the same again. And folks, let us not make the same mistake by looking at the world and seeing the chaos around and think God is not in control. All things work together for good for those that love the Lord, love God, and are called according to his purpose. Can I encourage you today to do what Job did? Listen to God question you and understand, who are we to question God, the creator of our universe? Can I assure you today, God created this universe and his hands are on the dial. Keep trusting in him, keep believing in him, and your life will be blessed. Have a stunning week.